Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I have a Retribution Paladin preview for Shadowlands that is way too early. But by that I mean everything is not set in stone yet. This is all coming from beta play, and what we know so far as of August 15th, everything has a chance to be tuned or changed before the game actually launches. But if you're looking for kind of a look into the way Rat kind of looks going into Shadowlands, because they're probably not going to change it too much. They might just tune some abilities, make them more useful or less useful. But yeah, this will give you a general idea of what's going on currently with Rat in the Shadowlands. So we're going to go through updated abilities, talents, covenants, legendaries, a little bit on the target cap, and things that the top three things that I think could improve Rat without obviously just saying make us the strongest thing, right? So that would be the best way to improve it. So let's go ahead and start with the updated abilities. We have Consecration back. Consecration is the normal spell that you would think it is. However, it does almost no damage, does not generate holy power, and literally almost does no damage. So currently, unless you were doing a gigantic pull, and I mean gigantic, it's not even worth pressing this button unless everything else is on cooldown. Like at the beginning of the expansion, you have so low haste that you have nothing else to press, then you could press Consecration. It is just not worth it, even for multi-target fights. So this is an ability where you would hopefully see that they buff the damage to at least make you think about pressing it. We also have our auras back. So if you played Paladin, in the past, you have Devotion aura, Concentration aura, the Movement Speed aura, and we also have Retribution aura. So Retribution aura is the one that's most going to be used probably, and that's if an ally dies, you gain Avenging Wrath for 8 seconds. So currently we have a ability that kind of does the same thing, where you get a burst of damage if an ally dies. So this is you gain your wings when an ally dies for 8 seconds. It currently does not stack with your current wings though, so it's not super useful. Some people think that might be a bug, so we'll see if that can get added into your current stuff. Also, you might use Devotion Aura, which is just a 3% damage reduction for your group or raid. We also have Turn Evil and Track Undead back. These are mostly just class fantasy abilities that don't have a huge practical use. Maybe when you're questing or soloing stuff, that could be more useful, but it is a lot more of the class fantasy. We had Wake of Ashes become a baseline ability. This is in BFA, it's a talent. Before that, it was in our Legion weapons, and now it's just a baseline ability. However, they did nerf it to only a 3 holy power generator instead of 5. So I don't like that change personally. I like that it's a baseline ability and I don't have to choose it in a talent row, but I don't know why they couldn't just kept it the same overall. It is what it is, I suppose. So let's go ahead and move on from updated abilities into our talents. So for the most part, our talent tree is very similar, with some old talents returning and some old abilities that we know and love being added in as well to certain rows. So our first row, we have Zeal, Righteous Verdict, and Execution Sentence. These are the exact same as BFA. So you're going to have the same general rules here. Zeal for straight AoE, Righteous Verdict kind of a hybrid, or just kind of like the casual or easy mode for single target, and Execution Sentence for pure single target, and not wanting and just wanting to do a little bit more damage than Righteous Verdict, really max out your damage. In the second row, we have Fires of Justice, Blade of Wrath, and Empyrean Power. Blade of Wrath would be the obvious single target choice here. I believe this replaces Hammer of Wrath, which I didn't even put that in the updated abilities because we still had it as we basically used it as a baseline ability for the entire BFA. But Hammer of Wrath, you no longer have to talent into either, just like Wake of Ashes. So Empyrean Power, Blade of Wrath, and Fires of Justice. Right now, Empyrean Power would obviously be the obvious one to use for AoE. That's the Azerite trait currently, that gives you a random Divine Storm. However, the difference is before that it was just based on doing damage. Now it's Crusader Strike has a 15% chance to proc it. Now Crusader Strike is your least prioritize holy power generator in your generation of holy power, and your least prioritized move, I guess, besides consecration. So with only a 15% chance, you're not going to get very many Empyrean powers. It does not feel good right now at all, and it's almost like unusable, frankly. So you're almost stuck between Blade of Wrath and Fires of Justice, and Fires of Justice is not the greatest talent either. So that row does not feel great right now, but they could fix that by just making Empyrean power proc more often, and then you would have a lot simpler choices there. Next row, we have the same thing as in BFA. Fist of Justice, Repentance, Blinding Light. So Fist of Justice is going to give you more stuns, hammers, and Repentance is going to be a basically you sap it for a minute, and then it also works in PvP. And then Blinding Light dazzles everything around you, making it kind of blinded. The next row, we have Eye for an Eye, Cavalier, and Unbreakable Spirit. That's the same as a row right now. And Eye for an Eye is obviously going to reduce physical damage. Cavalier is going to make you move or have 2 steeds, so more movement. And Unbreakable Spirit just reduces the cooldown still of your defensive abilities, or in this case, Shield of Vengeance and Divine Shield for rep. So very straightforward choices there as well. Nothing huge. It's actually the next row and then the last row where we have the biggest changes that are going to cause a lot of, not issues, but just a lot of debate, and we don't really know what's necessarily best in these rows yet and what combinations are going to work best depending on what covenant and everything else. So in this row we have Divine Purpose. They took it out of the bottom row, so might give you a chance to use it. Holy Avenger and Seraphim. Right now, Seraphim is not considered to be that good, even though it is generally a good ability. The problem is it's not going to scale, so you're going to keep getting better and better gear, unless they make it scale, of course. This is a tuning thing. If they tune that to make it scale, then it will get better as your gear gets better, let's say, and so it'll be possibly worth using. Holy Avenger, some people have liked using this, like with Crusade, to get their stacks up really high in the bottom row. Your holy power generation is tripled for 20 seconds. So some people have liked Holy Avenger and said good things about it. And a lot of people are planning on just kind of using Divine Purpose. However, the procs, once again, on this just feel extremely low, just like Empyrean Power does. So it doesn't feel great. And currently, it also does not add stacks to your Crusade. Again, hopefully that's just a bug, because you would want Divine Purpose procs to count as a holy power spender, and then increase your Crusade stacks. So that would make Divine Purpose at least a little bit better. But as of right now, it's kind of a debate between Divine Purpose and Holy Avenger, and using different variations of the bottom row with them. And Seraphim will actually be really good if it actually ends up being tuned to increase in damage as you gear up or as the expansion goes on. In the next tier, we have Selfless Healer, which is using your holy power spenders. You will eventually get a free Flash of Light. Justicar's Vengeance, which basically is kind of like a death strike for a DK. You use holy power to heal yourself. So it's basically a Templar's Verdict, but it heals you for the damage you do. And then Healing Hands is kind of a new one, but it's not really probably going to be used. When you use Lay on Hands on an ally less than 30% health, the cooldown of Lay on Hands is reduced by 50%. So you would get to use 2 Lay on Hands in a raid fight, for example, but you're just trying to snipe a heal, and I don't really see the usefulness in this right now, so maybe they can change that talent up a little bit. The last row is interesting, just like the Divine Purpose row. We have Sanctified Wrath, which is basically Light's Decree. So Avenging Wrath lasts 25% longer, and during Avenging Wrath, each holy power has a chance to, hit everything around it with light, like Light's Decree does in BFA. The issue with this, because this one would seem almost like a no-brainer to some extent, the issue with Sanctified Wrath is that it's basically only the power of like one Light's Decree, whereas obviously in BFA we're stacking them, so we have multiple. So unless they buff this one, it's not amazing. The good thing about it could be the AoE potential with it, because you are hitting all things around you. However, most people are definitely focusing on Inquisition and Crusade still right now. I played with Sanctified Wrath most of the time just because I wanted to test it out so far. And I can tell you it doesn't feel great, but it does. I like that the Avenging Wrath lasts longer. I do like that part of it. But, you know, the Inquisition and Crusade, that also has to do with gear. You know, Crusade and Inquisition are in different ways, both giving you more haste and stuff like that. So I think that has something to do with the feel as well. So Crusade and Inquisition are the ones that people are looking for the most. One issue I could see happening here, Crusade's the same as it's always been, and Inquisition is the same as well. If you play Paladin, you probably know what these abilities do. Inquisition is an active buff you keep on yourself, and Crusade is basically every holy power you spend increases your haste and damage done up to a maximum of 10 stacks. So you just want to get to your 10 stacks as fast as you can, and then for the rest of the wings, you're doing really, really high damage. So some people have paired that with Holy Avenger, for example. So Holy Power generation is tripled for 20 seconds. The problem also is the cooldown timers don't really line up very well with that. So for one of your Crusades, because Holy Avenger has a 3-minute cooldown, so for one of your Crusades, you would have you would get your stacks up insanely fast, and in like a raid fight, you would get one of your first one, let's say, your stacks up really fast and do maximum damage there, is kind of the idea behind it. And then Inquisition, like I said, an active buff that you keep on yourself by using some holy power. So the issue I could see happening is if they do tune Seraphim to make it, you know, let's say the best talent in that row, for a single target fight, you could be using Execution Sentence, Seraphim, and Inquisition all at once. That's a possibility. And for me, that's not exciting gameplay because I really don't want to keep an active debuff, manage an active buff with my wings in Seraphim, and then have a active buff that has to stay up at all times in Inquisition. For me, that's not fun to play. Managing two buffs that, you know, one has to be up all the time. Seraphim you want up with your Crusade, or not with your Crusade, but with your Avenging Wrath, and then managing the Execution Sentence on your target as well. So that's not my desired gameplay. I know some people wouldn't mind that, but that's kind of the issue or possible issue that I could see going forward if Seraphim did become the best thing there. We'll move on now to Covenants. So Covenants is probably the most highly debated one, and there's good reason for that. I know I've been in a lot of heated debates myself. So we'll go over what they are, what their state is now, and kind of my feelings on that. So Kyrian have Divine Toll. This basically casts your Judgment as Ret on up to 5 targets, and it gives you Holy Power for each target hit as well. So you could, if you hit 5 targets, you get max Holy Power and Judgment, and then you Divine Storm and do a bunch of damage to all of them basically. However, let's talk about so this is really good cleave, AoE, 1 minute cooldown. The issue with this one is that for single target, it's just Judgment. So you're just casting another Judgment with a 1 minute cooldown. So what I'd like to see for this one is a buff to, if it only hits one target, to have it do something extra, because right now it's not super useful. Like it's just kind of just a meh for single target, I'd say. For Venthyr, we have Ashen Hollow the target area, so you're putting down like a circle on the ground. Think maybe like Death and Decay in a way. Every 2 seconds, an enemy in the area suffers % of your spell power shadow damage, and an ally in the area is healed for % of your spell power. Within the hollow, you may use Hammer of Wrath on any target. So this one's actually extremely good single target, probably the best one. However, you're really limited because you have to stay in that circle, and your single target has to stay in that circle. So if there's any movement at all, this ability becomes kind of really crappy, and that's the issue with it. So in a pure patchwork fight, Ashen Hollow would definitely be like literally patchwork from Nax. Then it would be the best ability for that fight. But that's extremely specific, just like I guess Kyrian Toll would be, or Divine Toll would be very limited to, because it would have to be a cleave fight basically for it to be relevant. Necrolord, this one is the one that's least desired right now, and there's multiple reasons for that. So for Ret, you're going to throw your hammer at a target, dealing percent spell power or shadow damage, and empowering your next Templar's Verdict to automatically trigger Divine Storm. So it's if it's a single target fight, you're getting a Divine Storm that you don't need, and if it's a multi-target fight, you have to cast your Templar's Verdict to get a free Divine Storm that would be helpful. So it's just not entirely useful in almost any situation. And it also costs 1 holy power. So it doesn't generate like Kyrian Toll does. It actually costs a holy power. So that's a little bit of an issue as well to some degree there. So this is the least one. So maybe that one will be the one that gets reworked a little bit because people aren't really desiring this one. Night Fae right now is the overwhelming favorite. I do happen to think abilities will get reworked, so I'm not telling everyone to pick Night Fae, but what I will say is at least look into playing Night Fae right now, because this looks to be possibly the best one going into Shadowlands. So what this does is you have Blessing of Seasons, and you're going to have a single ability that does 4 different things. It shifts each time. So first, I think it starts in summer usually. So let's say you start in summer. Bless an ally for 30 seconds, causing their attacks to have a 40% chance to deal 30% additional holy damage. So that actually isn't that great of a chance when you have the 2% below 50% there. And then it turns to Autumn after use. It has a 15-second cooldown. So Blessing of Autumn, however, is pretty good. So you would use that. You would want to use your wings during that, because Blessing of Autumn blesses an ally for 30 seconds, causing their cooldowns to recover 50% faster. And then turns to Winter after that. And so like your Avenging Wrath would recover faster, your Wake would recover faster. Blessing of Winter, bless an ally for 30 seconds, that deals percentage of frost damage and slows enemies. So that's a straight damage buff right there, where it's not a percent chance that it's going to happen. It just, you will do more damage while that's up. Blessing of Winter. And then Blessing of Spring that it turns into, you would want to probably throw on a healer or a tank, depending on the situation or how it works out. But you bless an ally, or maybe just a tank, because a lot of tanks self-heal anyways. But bless an ally for 30 seconds, increasing their healing done and healing received by 10%. So if you did it to yourself, you would obviously want to just start healing at that point. But I don't see. I mean, there could be a fight where you're running out, so you're not on the boss and you're healing. Maybe you could cast it on yourself at that point, but you would mostly probably want to cast it on somebody else. And then you go right back to summer again. And each of these have a 15-second cooldown. So this is the best one so far, because summer, it is a damage buff, in any situation. Autumn does reset your cooldown 50% faster, so you're going to have more wings uptime. And then winter is again a damage buff. So for most of the time, this is helping you do damage or set yourself up to do damage with wings. So this is why this one is the most versatile overall. I could see this either getting nerfed down so everyone doesn't pick it, or like I said, I could see Toll being, having some single target viability to make it at least a debate. And I could see, it's hard to rework Ashen Hollow because just the nature of the ability, it's a circle you put down. So I don't know how they could rework that to make it more desirable. And there's tons of things they could do to the Necrolord Paladin Covenant ability, such as not cost holy power, or have your Templar's Verdict trigger another Templar's Verdict, or your Divine Storm trigger another Divine Storm. So that way you're at least getting 2 of the ability that you want to cast instead of just 1 of each. Those are just ways that they could improve the Necrolord one. That would actually be pretty simple, actually. So once again, Night Fae is the consensus favorite right now. I'm still holding out for Kyrian personally, and I don't think the difference is that gigantic to where I can't pick Kyrian, but I do understand that right now the Night Fae is in the lead. So next we'll go ahead and move to legendary powers, which might be one of the more exciting things and something that Rhett has to look forward to, because these are actually kind of cool. And we'll start with the Retribution Paladin ones first, and then just go do the general ones that any spec can wear. So first we have Badge of the Mad Paragon, which is Hammer of Wrath extends Avenging Wrath by 2 seconds, and it deals 20% additional damage. So, and you can put this on your head or hands legendary. So what's cool about this is that so you're extending Avenging Wrath. So if you paired this with Sanctified Wrath in the bottom tier of the talents, if you remember back to the talents, and then you also did Night Fae with the cooldown reduction, this would lead to a lot of wings uptime, which is definitely good, and that's what a lot of people are speculating on doing, using Badge of the Mad Paragon and using Night Fae. Not necessarily using Sanctified Wrath, but I think that could add to it as well, especially if they buff Sanctified Wrath at all. I think that could really be a nice combination there of three things all synergizing. We have Final Verdict. Replaces Templar's Verdict with Final Verdict, a devastating strike that deals 194% of attack power, has holy damage, has a 50% chance to activate Hammer of Wrath and reset its cooldown. This can go on your chest or back. So Final Verdict is kind of makes Templar's Verdict a little bit of a mid-range ability, so you don't have to cast it at just melee range, and then also has a chance to reset your Hammer of Wrath. It's a decent ability. Probably has some niche uses that you could use for certain fights once you craft that one. But Badge of the Mad Paragon would probably be crafted before that one. We have Relentless Inquisitor, which is an Azerite trait from BFA. Spending Holy Power grants you X haste for 12 seconds per Holy Power spent, stacking up to 20 times. This can go on your legs or back. Again, this is from Relentless Inquisitor Azerite. Tempest of the Lightbringer. This is actually a really cool one. Again, it's a little bit niche. Maybe you could use it in Torghast, Mythic Pluses, but I love this ability. I think it should just be baseline. Projects your Divine Storm forward 20 yards like in Legion, damaging all enemies in its path. Also increases damage dealt by Divine Storm by 20%. So that's a key too. So for just a straight AoE fight, it's also really good because you're just increasing the damage of your Divine Storm by 20%. However, with target cap, Divine Storm only hits 5 things, so that could temper the greatness of it a little bit. So overall, in this one, Badge of the Mad Paragon is pretty much considered the best one. But, you know, Final Verdict is kind of cool. I'm a little bit lackluster with the Relentless Inquisitor, and I really like Tempest of Lightbringer. So just in cool factor and just how it feels, that actually is a pretty good set of legendaries there overall. And then our general legendaries, we have From Dusk Till Dawn. When you reach 5 Holy Power, you gain Blessing of Dawn. When you reach 0, you gain Blessing of Dusk. Blessing of Dawn, damage and healing increase by 6% for 10 seconds. So it's a damage buff when you get to 5 Holy Power for 10 seconds. And then Blessing of Dusk, damage taken is reduced by 6% for 10 seconds. So it has survivability to it as well. So damage buff, survivability, and damage and healing buff, and survivability to it. So it's a useful legendary. I can't imagine it being the best, but it's a useful one. The next one's interesting because while it's a general paladin, this is potentially really good for Retribution if you're willing to just forego all your defenses, basically. So casting Avenging Wrath or any Forbearance ability grants 5 Holy Power. So you would Avenging Wrath, be it at 0 Holy Power, be it max, go ahead and use all your Holy Power, bubble, use all your Holy Power, lay on hands, ally, have 5 Holy Power, use it all, bop an ally, have all your Holy Power, use it all. So you would just max out your Holy Power. It would just be a huge burst, especially on your opener. So you're doing this with a potion, maybe with heroism, and so, or lust, depending on your faction, I suppose. And so this one has potential, but you have to be willing to forego everything, because you really would have to go all in on this one. You wouldn't want to just half-ass that one. The Magistrate's Judgment. Judgment has a 50% chance to reduce the cost of your next Holy Power spender by 1. This was basically a Legion set bonus. I think that was during Nighthold, I want to say. I'd have to look for sure, but I believe that was during Nighthold. Tier 21, whatever that was. Uther's Guard. This is the only one that doesn't do any damage increase at all. Your Freedom, Sacrifice, Spell Warding, and Protection are reduced by 1 second per Holy Power spent. So if you were doing something where you're casting Freedom a lot, Uther's Guard could be useful, but it seems like it's mostly, I couldn't imagine anyone really wanting to use this one unless there's just you really need to cast extra Blessing of Spell Wardings as a tank, maybe. More bops, I'm not sure. But this one, even for any spec, it's a general one, but because it has no throughput at all, I can't see this one being highly desirable. So again, Leodrin's Fury, really good, really possibly good there, and then some pretty cool straight ret ones as well. So I'd say, because I'm not really enamored with Relentless Inquisitor, I would say probably 4 of the legendaries I am pumped to use, even if a few of them are a little bit niche. Next, we'll go ahead and move to talk about a little bit about the target cap. So most melee, I think all melee, have now target caps on some of their abilities. Not all of them, but our target cap is for our Divine Storm. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. So our Divine Storm only hits 5 targets now. So before it was just fall off damage and stuff like that, and when you're hitting a big group, it was more split or reduced. We actually did not have to suffer through that as Ret Paladins, but for most classes. But now we just have a target cap. Our damage is increased by Divine Storm by a little bit, but we only can hit 5 things with it. This is a highly disputed thing. It's only affecting melee right now, or physical damage doers, and the issues could be for in like a Mythic Plus setting. Is there even any point to take a melee because you can't do gigantic pulls? You still can do gigantic pulls, but they won't all die at the same time because you'll only be hitting 5 targets. Unless you're all hitting a different 5 target. Like if you pull 10 and half the melee, and let's say you have 2 melee and one melee's somehow magically hitting 5 targets and the other melee is hitting the other 5 targets and your range is hitting all 10 targets. But that's just not how it works. So there are some really deserved frustrations with this target cap right now. I want to see how it bears out personally. That's how I always feel. I want to actually see how it bears out, but I think the projections forward and worrying about them are very valid in this case. And lastly, I'm going to talk about my top 3 ways to improve Ret right now for Shadowlands, again without knowing all the information, so these are going to be a little bit generalized. Tune Covenants so it feels better if you make a non-conformist choice. What I mean by this is, right now, Night Fae does feel like the no-brainer choice for most situations, right? So you could say, well, Kyrian Toll is better for Mythic Plus. Well, I do mostly content where I'm fighting, if you're doing content where you're always by yourself, just fighting in the open world, Ashen Hollow, you're just doing world quests, you're killing the world quest boss, you're pulling them to you, you're not really moving much, so Ashen Hollow works fine for you. But overall, what most people are going to do, or what the top end people do, right? So right now it's just a no-brainer to pick Night Fae as it stands as of August 15th. So what I would like to do is have them tune that, even if Night Fae is still the best, to where it's not like a huge deal that you don't pick Night Fae. And that's my only goal, really. Because, for example, there are some fights during progression, even though Execution Sentence sims like 1,000 DPS higher, that I might use the Verdict ability instead, Righteous Verdict instead on that tier. Because I don't really, if I'm struggling for whatever reason, just learning the mechanics, and I'm struggling managing the active debuff on the boss, then I'm not gonna keep using it. My DPS might even go up if I'm just performing better by not having to do that. So that's what I mean by not being punished by making a non-conformist choice. So there's certain talents you can choose. In certain instances, for example, you could choose, especially before Crusade really took over, there was times during BFA that you could choose Divine Purpose and only suffer a really small DPS loss. And that's what I'm kind of looking for here, to be able to choose Covenants that you want to choose with only a small DPS loss, or have the gains be so great, have the AoE of Kyrian Toll be so great that it's worth taking just because every time there's AoE you're really powerful. Or have Ashen Hollow be so strong that on the patchwork fights you are just the top person no matter what. So those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for there. I would like to put Wake of Ashes back up to 5 Holy Power. I don't like the feel of the 3 Holy Power Wake of Ashes. I've just been trained for 5 Holy Power, and that just feels better. Wake of Ashes is your big ability, 45-second cooldown. and hits everything. Just feels like this badass ability, and I wanted to generate 5 holy power once again. I don't actually have a lot of people clamoring for this somehow, but that's one of the things that I would like to change, that I think they could change. And then I would like to also see the auras go off GCD. I don't see myself changing auras very much during the fight, but if I have to, it's a little bit annoying that they're on the global cooldown. Global cooldown's a whole nother issue that people have problems with, such as the target cap. I'm fine with it overall, but I do think there are some abilities that don't need to be on it, such as auras, such as stances, such as even maybe changing forms. I think certain things like that don't necessarily need to be on the GCD, but that's just my opinion on that. Most people think almost nothing should be on the GCD, so I don't think people are going to hate on me for saying, a couple things shouldn't be off on the GCD. But that is the state of Paladins right now. I know it was a lot. So we went through the updated abilities, the talents, the covenants, the legendaries, the target cap, ways to improve, and hopefully that gives you a general sense of the way things are looking in Shadowlands as of right now. This all could change and be completely meaningless information by the end of it, which if that happens, fine, as long as it makes Retribution Paladins better as the end result. So as always, I ask you to please subscribe to the channel because that helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody have a good one.